but I do appreciate it more this week than I did a year ago.
I would say the same thing. Hey, welcome everybody to the Unconnoisseur channel. We do have another special episode with a very difficult album this week. This week, episode 31. This would be number 70 in our countdown. The Art Ensemble of Chicago and the album Fanfare for the Warriors. I want to start with a quote that Matt and I had talked about several months ago from Robert Glasper. Everybody's not going to like jazz. Let's just be honest about it. Not everybody is going to like everything. There's a disconnect in generations, and some people aren't going to feel that music. That was Robert Glasper. And my reminder, not everybody is going to like all the music that's on our list of the top 100. And Matt, I wanted to spin this over to you. You had something relevant to this conversation back then and even more relevant today.
Yeah, when I was in the military, we were living in Clarksville, Tennessee. I was stationed at Fort Campbell, and Kendra and I started a little side hustle. We started working with an art gallery where we would do in-home art shows. Now we had a place to go to gather the art, and we kind of picked different categories, different pieces of art to take out and show. At the start of our show in home, of course, we would introduce ourselves and the company that we work for and tell, little stories about ourselves. But we would also say, tonight you need to keep the yucks to yourself, because what you're getting ready to yuck, someone next to you may be falling in love with. So art, of course, is very, what's the word? Eclectic, yes. And what you may not enjoy, someone else sitting next to you that may be their favorite thing in the world. So I'm going to do my best tonight to keep my yucks to myself and try and find some positive things regarding the album. But anyways, my name's Matt. I'm another co-host here on the Unconnoisseur channel.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Dad Rice.
Welcome back to the channel, both of you. Dad
Thank
and
you.
Phil, it's so cool. I don't know where we go next week with Phil and recording. I know that you're packing up for Romania, but next week is going to also be a killer week. This week, though, again, it was Art Ensemble of Chicago, and I know where we're going to go, and I'm going to include a little bit of a clip from last week where we ended with, oh boy, here we go. I have no real desire to listen to it again for next week's episode.
So don't tune in next week, except for to hear.
Well, okay, let's put it this way. We made it through City of Glass, but from the pre-discussion right now, you can pretty much guess.
I did listen to the album at least once so that I could tell Matt that I did. Just brace yourselves for the Art Ensemble of Chicago.
Yep, brace yourselves. And you know what? Though some of our listeners, it might be their style of jazz. So
before we get into Art Ensemble of Chicago, do you want to go about your weekend music, or would we like to hit the slideshow, Matt?
No, you know what? Let's do week first, because I know at least one of us has had a really cool week and is going to be able to tell a cool story about their weekend music. So I'll tell you what, and it's not me. So let me go first. I had a pretty eclectic week in music this week. I didn't get a chance to see any live music, which is okay, but my shuffle playlist always kept me interested. The Art Ensemble of Chicago, believe it or not, we dug a little deeper this week than we did last year when you and I covered it. So it kept me interested this week. Not to mention that the artists that you and I are on our personal journey kept me interested this week as well. And it was sometimes tough to pick. So that's my week. It's pretty eclectic. How about yours?
I had a great meeting on, I guess that was Monday or Wednesday, I can't remember now, with a local musician who has been a national and international musician about potentially doing a video project for a big band coming up. So that was the highlight of my week. And I got to say that our album this week has balanced some of what we're recording about. There's been that cool sound to blend with this week's Art Ensemble. Outside of that, it's business as usual. Phil, what about you?
Hey, I'll sum mine up quick. I got to go out to Sweetwater this last weekend, and go to the Guitar Fest. There were over 5,000 people who were supposed to come through. And the craziest part for us as the boys and I walked through there is we said, sometimes you feel like you're the only one. You're struggling, you're working, you're trying, whatever, and you see these great people, but man, to see all these people around. So we got to go walk around the different guitars, the makes, the models, and we got to just pick them up. They let us, play the 50th anniversary stuff. We just got to play on some guitars that you went, yeah, this one is really good, and that one, I don't know why anybody pay money for it. But we actually, this is the coolest part. We got to meet a guy named Andrew. And as Andrew was sitting there telling us about Takamine guitars and sharing everything about it, we kept talking. Brady and I were standing there continuing the conversation. And sure enough, I'm a drummer though, I this and that and I whatever. And I said, man, it's just so cool. You've moved from Washington, you come out to Fort Wayne, and it brings you all the way out here. And he goes, yeah, it's just cool. I love it here. And I said, what Surak's done with this place and how he's just developed everything that he's done. I mean, it's a mastermind idea, but so many good people come around, right? There's such a crowd and a community that fills around. And he goes, yeah, I actually play with Surak. I'm the drummer. And I said, oh, no way. He said, yeah. And so we get carrying on. And I said, so you might know that my niece Delaney was the one who filled in for you the other night. Oh, Lady D. Oh, yes, man. I love her. And I won't tell it here for everyone that's ever played as a fill in for him. But he did say there's certain ones that work and there's certain ones that don't. And he said, I'll tell you what, when we talked about it afterwards and they share, we know who our fill in is. Lady D will be the fill-in. We really loved her. He said, I'm not just saying that because. He said, seriously, the amount of energy she put into it, the amount of time she spent diving into learning those gigs, it wasn't an easy task, and she did it. It was so cool. Yeah. So we were proud Uncle Phil, proud cousin Brady standing there going, right? Yeah, that's Lady D. How cool. So
you could have said, hey, I know her. I can get her autograph for you.
It cost you $50, but yeah. So awesome. Yeah, it was really cool to see all those artists. I was hoping there was a little bit more music while we were there. There wasn't a whole lot of music. I expected to see some artists playing. There were artists all over the place. Caleb walked through later, looked up an artist, looked him up on Spotify. He's like, dude, Dad, that guy was getting a drink next to me over at the fountain. Like, this is that artist, man. I listened to some of his stuff. So kind of cool.
So Dad, what about your week? Because I've been excited about this since I heard a little bit about it. Do tell.
Yeah, I am pretty excited to report a couple things, actually. I'm part of a group called the Fellowship of Christian Counselors, as well as I supervise a group at our church that's called the Nehemiah Partners, and it's a counseling group. And I had been listening and thinking, what music could I use? What medium, what message could I convey to both groups? And as I pondered it, I thought of a Bible verse that goes along with Gregory Porter's song, Take Me to the Alley. And I will tell you that on Thursday night with our Nehemiah Partners group, I could hardly contain myself for the energy, the emotion, that the power of that message to take me to the alley. And so that helped me prepare for the Friday morning group, the Fellowship of Christian Counselors. When I got there, I was a little nervous because I'm not very orthodox in the way I present things. At least somebody told me that years ago. So I thought, I'm going to be outside the box, and I'm going to give a brief kind of overview of how I was introduced to jazz by way of the unconnoisseurs.
Shameless plug from Dad.
Oh, wow. My older two boys introduced me to jazz. I didn't go over the unconnoisseur. You can find it here on the unconnoisseur.com. I didn't go over that.
Okay.
But they got the message. And as I played, yes, right, that's the one. I played about 3 minutes of that song it was a live performance, and Gregory Porter just he first of all, he stirs you anyway, and the message of "Take Me to the Alley." As I played that, I looked over the 20-some people that were there in attendance. There were people with their heads bowed, eyes closed. They were processing the words, the powerful words and message that Gregory Porter was purporting. And afterward, after the devotional and before we left that morning, a lady came up and talked to your mom, Pat, and said, I am so touched by that. I'm going to use that music for a marriage couple that I'm working with. Yeah, I thought,
oh man,
wow, is that cool
deep.
or what?
That's deep.
That was just so fantastic. So, man, that was just fantastic. And I will say this: today I went to the drugstore, and a young man waiting on me had tattoos that were musical notes and stuff. And I asked him if he was into music. Do you listen to jazz? No, I don't listen to jazz. But I said, but you play music. And he said, yeah, I play guitar, piano, and drums. I said, oh, maybe you've heard of my no, I've not heard of her. I said, well, her group, what's the group? He said, I said, well, it's the Gunslingers. He said, well, I've not heard of them. I said, but they're going to be playing this Saturday night at the Country Heritage Winery. And the guy perked up, and it's almost like he all but said, yeah, I want to go there and watch. So I don't know whether he will or not, but I thought that's pretty cool. Yeah. Though I was a little disappointed that he's not into jazz, and so I didn't press the unconnoisseur stuff.
Well, not everybody is into jazz. It's
but
not everybody's
I represent. But I
represent. You do represent. I tell you what, that it brings me to tears. It really does. Just how much you have represented not only the three of us throughout our whole life, and of course the Unconnoisseur channel, but jazz music. I mean, Drew and I were laughing on Friday that you've become a jazz messenger. You have, just in a few short weeks that's cool. That we've been recording and everything. You're the one, you message more about it than he and I do, because you do it face to face, eyeball to eyeball. We're staring at a camera talking our mouths off, and you're face to face with people. Man, that's impressive.
I want them to know. I'm proud of you guys. First of all, I'm proud of the deliberation that you put into this, the time and effort and energy, and the professionalism as unconnoisseurs. That is just so cool. So carry on. I could almost say carry on, my wayward sons, but
that's the wrong genre of music.
Yeah,
it's still a good song.
Yeah, a very good song.
Well, all that to say, inspiration to say the least. It's been an inspiration to sit around with you guys this summer and chill out to some jazz, be inspired to dig a little deeper into some of the roots and the history of our musical background. And yeah, I've not enjoyed watching myself, but I've learned a little bit about myself, as I go back and watch other episodes and go, do I look that dumb usually? Do I ramble on that way all the time?
I won't make a joke. I'm not going to make a joke.
Thank you. We were in a good note.
I think it's something interesting worth touching on is it is a reflection on ourselves. Not about the recording. It's not about the audio or do I have the best video or do I have. But the question remains is, what about me as being impacted by the music, by the rich heritage and the culture from where the music is coming from to the rich culture of where it's going. As a musician, you've been there and done that. You've played music and you know the impact that it can have in a life. Now we're looking back at that going, how does it still shape my world today? And
it does, yeah.
How is it shaking me today? And I think that's the cool part is that Matt and I have wrestled over the year, almost
Almost two.
How many different albums and artists and rabbit holes really shook us to the core? Not because of the music, but just simply because it was something to do with the music. So I think it's relevant that it does shake us.
The first couple of episodes that we did were rough, and we started we started finding our groove, right? And we got a little better equipment, a little better sound, and I don't like the way I look or sound on camera, but I'll tell you what, it doesn't bother me when I listen to Kendra listening to it while she's getting ready anymore. It's just, I've come to
used to it.
I get used to it a little bit. So let's introduce the album one more time and go through the slideshow real quick.
I'm going to drop that slide up right now. This is episode 31, album number 70 in our countdown from 100 to number 1. This is the Art Ensemble of Chicago, and it is Fanfare for the Warriors.
All right. So first slide, of course, whatever you do it to jazz.
I'm sorry. Let's go to the slideshow now.
Yeah, that's okay.
We got too much else to cover, I think.
Yeah. Let's move on. So
I would suggest.
Next slide. I just downloaded a couple of pictures. We're going to talk about the dress up characters here in a little bit, but I just found it interesting that their stage presence, it is what it is. So I found a black and white, I found a color picture. Next slide is just a couple more pictures I found of them. It's funny because for as much as I didn't care for them, I did a lot of research this week and really plowed into them. So stay there.
I'm just making sure you got enough room.
Stay there.
You're good.
So the bottom picture there on that slide, I really like. It's just it's in the same color scheme as the album art, but it's different. So I just picked that picture just because I like it. It got the instruments and it's black, white, and red. It's really cool. Next slide, jazz lingo for the day. So I couldn't pick any other lingo than free jazz. So that's our word for today, free jazz. Now, free jazz is a style of the early and middle 60s involving free playing and a vehement effect. It was originally associated with Black culture nationalism. Sometimes two drummers and or two bass players were used. And then I highlighted this sentence. Some free jazz was not very good, and some who played it later denounced it. But the style became an ingredient in future styles. So that we're talking about Art Ensemble of Chicago, and they are a free jazz avant-garde group. So jazz lingo for the day, free jazz.
Nice.
I want to touch on what you said, because if you read about free jazz and avant-garde jazz, they're listed as an avant-garde jazz when you look at them on Wikipedia. There's close ties to all of it. It is this, the quote that I read from free jazz. It is as if the musician had learned that entire freedom is not an answer to expression, that the player needs boundaries and basis from which to explore. So that free jazz movement, but the avant-garde free jazz, it was interesting, that the quote on your slide there.
Yeah, for sure. Dad, did you have any input on free jazz lingo of the day?
No, I like the idea, or like what you said about it. It definitely is free. I mean, just freeing, like a liberation, no holds barred. Let's do something. Let's outside the box. The box.
Right.
When I think of free jazz, I think almost like free range chickens. They go like crazy. They do their thing. They're not trying to keep in step with anybody else. They're not trying to move as a herd. They don't do anything else. There might be something that startles them, and all of a sudden, boom, they're all together running. But this is perfect, because the more, like you said, the more you studied them, the more you realized, okay, I could appreciate this. And it's funny, but this week of all weeks, I actually studied more in and pushed more in, because I appreciated with the art form. And my wife, Scotty, mentioned this. She said, if you could see something, I bet you this would be an expression you could appreciate. And so when you look at the artwork, or their faces, when you look at those kind of things, guarantee, you would sit in a room and go, I appreciate what I'm seeing, but you definitely don't just turn on the album.
Let's take a quick look at what you're talking about, Phil. I'm going to roll a clip.
Well,
in one sense.
That was part of Art Ensemble, their whole deal. Their live shows were the best because you could be in the moment with them, as free as it was, and that was part of their deal. I think that's coming up on the next slide. I think on the next slide, just the information slide that I always put together. So Art Ensemble started in 1969, and they're actually still presently performing. Not all the members, not all the influential members are the same, but yeah, they're still cutting music. Influences I found were world music and jazz. They have 52 albums in their discography, and the genre is avant-garde and free jazz. All the musicians are multi-instrumentalists. So, the drummer may play congas and bongos and xylophone all at the same time. The sax player may play a sax, a flute. That was kind of freaky because somebody does not want us to talk about Art Ensemble in Chicago because we just had a power outage and we're back. So it's going to take my brain a minute to get refocused. But here we go. We were on the slideshow. I was talking about the multi-instrumentalist. The sax player may play the flute and the clarinet as well. The trumpet player may trumpet, flugelhorn, whatever. So they're all multi-instrumentalists. Next thing they're known for is wearing costumes and makeup to represent everyone throughout the universe. So that's you mentioned them dressing up in costume and being at a live show. Yeah, they did that to represent the universe. Stolen Moments was the AIDS awareness album in 1994, the Time Magazine of the Year album.
Wow.
In 1994. Stolen Moments from Art Ensemble of Chicago, not the stolen moments that you're smiling about, Drew, because that discussion is coming up in several weeks and I cannot wait. Now, the website listed on the Wikipedia page is artensembleofchicago.com. I clicked on that link and it does not take you to the artensembleofchicago.com website. It's some random Japanese cartoon.
Somebody bought it.
Somebody bought it, and it's not Art Ensemble of Chicago. So I put that on the slideshow. I had clicked on it before that, but if you could find a link for Art Ensemble, maybe we could change that in the slideshow or put the link in the description. Really cool. 6 Degrees this week. Lester Bowie is the trumpet player for Art Ensemble of Chicago. Now, the Stolen Moments album that we just talked about, Red Hot and Cool, the AIDS awareness album in '94, Herbie Hancock played on that album. So Lester Bowie, Herbie Hancock to Miles Davis. I got 1 degree of separation.
Yep.
And you found another one.
And I did. Don Moye. Don Moye was he's the drummer and percussionist on this album, and he played with Kenny Clark, who played with Miles Davis.
Miles Davis, yeah.
So Kenny Clark was a connection. Now, this was the cool part to me is that Don Moye was, in that album, by the way, was Pieces of Time in 1984. Now, I also came across this before I go back to Don. Muhal Richard Abrams played with Jack DeJohnette, who had played with Miles Davis. And that was Made in Chicago in 2013, that album. the reason I brought up Muhal Richard Abrams is he also played with a local Texan by the name of Kenny Durham, who had written the song Blue Bossa. And I keep reading this, when you read about underrated jazz musicians, they show a picture of Kenny Durham as a trumpet player.
Wow.
He was overlooked many, many times. But I want to go back to Don Moye. Don Moye, in his early years, played with the Rochester Crusaders, which was a DCI organization.
That's
way.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned that in our earlier conversation about DCI. So
Yeah.
What's DCI for the listeners, Drew?
Drum Corps International. And as of this week, they just wrapped up their 2024 season. And what a great season of music it had been. Drum Corps International, drum and bugle.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's marching band, and
Marching
it's
band.
not jazz. But that's okay. I'll forgive you because it's not jazz. But it is marching bands.
We talked history at the beginning, music influence. Marching band was part of it,
That's
goes
true.
into it. We're dressing up like crazy with costumes. It fits in there somewhere. We
That's
didn't
true.
Well-
paint our faces, but
The art part of avant-garde is also this. It is a display, not only musical, but visual. And I think that was important to talk about, is what was a face paint for? And it wasn't just African, but it was universal and cosmic as well, is what they mentioned. For all the worlds that we have not encountered yet, this is their music too.
So let me finish the slideshow, Today in Jazz History. Then we'll play a clip for Art Ensemble of Chicago. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay, so today in jazz history, today is August the 20th. Drummer Mildred Graves was born in 1941. Guitarist Jimmy Rainey was born in 1927. And trombonist Frank Rossellino was born in 1926. Now, I couldn't find it relevant to me in either of those artists. So I just put this just today in jazz history.
somebody knows them.
Somebody knows them. Yep.
Yep.
Okay,
So-
that's it for the slideshow.
Do you have a clip that you want to roll first? If not, I want to play the Fanfare for the Warriors. All right. That was a Fanfare for Warriors. That was the opening clip, and it kind of gives you a sample over that 45 seconds of what this music is really going to be about. Do anybody else? I'm looking at the screen to everybody. Do you have any other music that you want to suggest?
Well, okay, I got a bunny trail and it's going to go kind of long. So maybe you save me to the last, because there's a couple of them that I just went, are we still on the same album, and appreciated it a little bit more. But Matt's got a comment I can see on the screen about that one.
Okay, so I did. All right, so here's my note. I said the only saving grace for this album is song number 2, Barnyard Scuffle Shuffle, with the big band feel in the middle of the song. Now, I failed to, in my notes, make a timestamp of where the big band feel comes in, but it's got a swing big band feel right in the middle of song number 2, Barnyard Scuffle Shuffle. So
let's roll that clip right now.
Yeah.
So kind of bluesy, almost.
Kind of
Bluesy, big band.
Barnyard
Yeah.
Shuffle.
Dad, what about you? Did you want to hear anything in particular?
No, nothing has stuck out to me though. The second one, like you're mentioning, there was that section where it did sound like big band, and like Phil said, a little bit of bluesy,
Yeah.
but otherwise, not really.
Okay. So, yeah, go ahead.
Drew's
I know
got
where
one.
you're going to go. Go ahead with this one.
You want me to take it?
Yeah.
Okay. So song number 7. Let me pull up the song list because I want to
It's
read the name
called
of this.
The Key.
The Key. That's
Yes.
it. That's it. Song number 7.
Yes.
The Key.
You and I were talking about this earlier. I think in about 30 seconds to the end of the song. The song itself is like 1 minute and 16 seconds. That's it.
Yeah. Yep.
So we want to play that clip, but before we do we want to play this? Tell me about it. This clip.
I like Saturday Night Live. I've been a fan of Saturday Night Live since I was a kid. Not every episode or every week that I watch, but Weekend Update for me is probably the highlight of Saturday Night Live anymore. And so these funny skits that they do on Weekend Update, this particular one just stuck out in my head. These two are hilarious. Kristen Wiig and I can't think of his name right now. It escapes my brain. I should have thought about it earlier.
And that guy.
Yeah, and that guy. They come out and they're this musical act that is a big musical act, and they don't prepare anything, and he's making the song up as he's sitting there, and she is trying to follow along word for word in the skit.
Skit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Right. So
it's
I was waiting for my moment.
That's funny, Phil.
Yeah. In the moment.
She's making it up.
And they're running to the park.
Then they go running and running.
Well, so this would be the clip from Saturday Night Live called Cat and Garth Summertime Approaches, I think is what I have here.
Yeah.
So let's roll that. I don't know that we need to roll that clip, but let's roll that clip.
I thought you just woke up.
We were sleep driving. Just don't tell the police. That's all.
Yes. Well, just let us sing one more.
20 more. 20.
No, one. One more.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And this one actually has music.
Yes, hit it. When the sun is shining on your shoulders and the birds are chirping in the sky.
Oh, I like this.
Don't
This is
you
nice.
know that it's gonna be the time to
count dune buggies. Dune buggies. Where did they go? Where did they go? I'm gonna count dune buggies. Sing along with me. There's one right over there.
And who's driving? Who's driving?
It's Mr.
Garth and Cat, everyone! Garth and Cat!
Yeah,
What a clip.
that was.
Yeah,
So,
there
and
it
then,
is.
of course, song number 7, The Key. Towards the end of that song, it reminded me of that clip. That was the funny part of song number 7. And it's got the Night in Tunisia feel. The first part of the song. It's got the
Well,
Night in Tunisia
let me
feel.
roll that clip so we can. It does have that night, but let's roll that clip. Here we go in 3, 2.
I could see that the moon and earth were on a string. To a broken I know of a key. Unlock the door and move the floor. The cat and the rat now know the score. Let the evening go on into day and on its
Nice.
Cutting edit there.
Nice.
Question, just a quick question. Did they have an album titled The Key? Or was it just that one song?
Just that one song on
Okay.
the
Was that-
Fanfare album.
Yeah,
Well,
I did
that's it.
listen.
They did have 52 studio albums,
Yes.
and a lot of that. There may have been an album by that name, which maybe would make sense. I don't have that information in front of me.
That's okay. That's
I'm
cool.
looking. So, all right, Drew. So let me ask you this: the week you and I did this personally, what was it? 30
It was
weeks
back
ago.
in October last
Yeah.
year.
It was funny because neither one of us really explored too much outside of Fanfare. We put on Fanfare and we thought, or at least I thought, man, if this is what the rest of Art Ensemble is like, I don't really need to listen to any more of Art Ensemble. And our scores coming up here will kind of reflect on how we felt.
Before we rate that, before we go to that, I think we need to throw this out. I rated it a 4.5 last year. It was the lowest rating I'd ever given anybody. What about you, Matt?
Well, I thought, yes, absolutely, yeah. And I felt bad rating it that way.
But we did not care for the music of the time. But I want to throw that in early because I want to talk about kind of that crawfishing deal out of this. This week, I think this is where you were going. I rabbit holed into a whole lot of their albums. I've got 7 of their albums. I've rabbit holed into Roscoe Miller, the Sextet. I've got 6 of his albums. Lester, I got 10 of his albums. Now, a lot of it is avant-garde, but there's so much. There's some big band, big brass sounds, and we threw it out last year.
We did, and I feel like we didn't give it a fair shake because of that one album. And you and I, we still laugh about, hey, director, what time signature are we in?
Right.
Right. Okay. What key are we going to play in?
I got no idea.
Sure.
Yeah,
playing that key. Okay. How long are we going to play for?
Until we're done.
So you and I laugh about that, about free jazz, but we didn't really rabbit hole too much last year. And I'm not saying that I would change my score, but I do have a better appreciation for Art Ensemble of Chicago this time around than I did a year ago.
Yes.
And I even recommended another album to Dad, Tribute to Lester.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
That was very good.
So
Lester Bowie, trumpet and percussionist. Tribute to Lester.
Yeah.
Tribute to Lester.
And it's interesting, Matt, because if we talk about the journey that we had been on over a year, we're on album 30. So we've had 70 weeks of these miscellaneous artists. I found this in the history of avant-garde, and it really kind of made me ponder for a moment. Some of the works of Lenny Tristano in the 40s, and they went on to label this. Other notable examples of proto-free jazz included City of Glass, written by Bob Gradinger and Stan Kenton.
Stan Kenton.
And it went on to list a host of other names and people whose albums we've listened to, that this was an earlier start even back into the 40s. And it blew me away that why didn't I I just rated the album. I hated it. And now I'm thinking, what did I miss by not listening to Lester and Roscoe? Don Moye on drums or Muhal Richard Abrams on piano. My bad.
I was trying to think of something that I could relate it to, and for me, it's wasabi. If you were to give a 6-month-old wasabi, they probably lose their mind and cry and wail. If you gave it to them when they are 3 years old, they probably cry and whine and wail. But if you gave it to them when they were 10, and then 11, and then 12, they get an appreciation for wasabi.
Yep.
And I feel like Art Ensemble is my wasabi, and I'm a baby here, 30 weeks into our jazz journey, and I'm eating wasabi as a 6-month-old.
I have something for you then, and it goes with my bunny trail.
Okay.
So here it goes. I got something to put your wasabi flames out. Why the heck am I handing you a naked juice? Naked juice. He's got the pina colada. I'm sorry, I didn't get one for you guys. I got the green machine. So sip on Sip on that for a second, all right? Because you got to follow my bunny trail just for a second.
He's gonna drop a nugget.
I'm gonna go there. Illustrum is the first one that actually comes up here from the album that I have in Spotify. So I listened to it with my family, and actually we're like, what the heck is going on? What's happening to our ears? And then the poetry pops in. And when the poetry pops in, I heard a word repeated over: Odwalla, 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 paint the faces green. Odwalla delivered the people of the sun from the gray haze. And the poetry on top of the art, on top of the way that it went together, I just went, actually, I would have started at like 4 or 5 rating this. But after digging into a little bit more of it, the appreciation, the poetry, and everything that went into it, I would pay to watch these guys. I seriously would go to one of their shows. And here's where it gets crazy. So what the heck is Odwalla? And I thought, I know the name Odwalla. Where does Odwalla come from? Odwalla was a juice company that Scotty and I used to drink all the time. But here's the bunny trail. You ready for this? Odwalla juice was named based on the Art Ensemble's Odwalla tribute to the one who leads the people of the sun from the gray haze. So listen to this. Did you know the juice company took its name from the work of the Art Ensemble of Chicago? Odwalla, teacher of the people of the sun, its character, a myth poem by Joseph Jarman, recited by Malachi Favors, composition Illustrium of the Art Ensemble album Fanfare of the Warriors. So this is Wikipedia. Take it for what it's worth. But I followed some other people. The name started Odwalla was taken from the character guide, again, from the founder that had a favorite song that every night they closed with, Illustrum. People wanted to watch this. That's how they composed or how they closed their evenings. The Art Ensemble played this. So on October 7th, 1996, right? Odwalla actually, they were creating apple juice, all right? But their claim to fame was to do using this system without pasteurization. And because they were doing that, it was, see, we can get the best nutrients and everything and all the greatest stuff. So Odwalla is named from the Odwalla guys. But because they weren't pasteurizing it, it came from a blemished fruit and it contaminated it with E. coli. It resulted in the death of a child and 66 other customers that were sickened. So the outbreak occurred because they sold this juice this way. They claimed that the pasteurization altered the flavor and it destroyed the nutrients. And because of the lack of pasteurization, the number of other flaws in their safety practices, the company had changed, or they were charged with 16 criminal counts of distributing adulterated juice. Odwalla pleaded guilty and was fined with $1.5 million at the time. That was the most significant penalty in a food poisoning case ever in the United States. Later on, Odwalla is bought out by Coca-Cola, and they made billions of dollars off of Odwalla juice. So I went out and tried to find Odwalla, but guess what? They don't sell it anymore. It's discontinued.
Because Coca-Cola owns it.
Well, I'm sure Coca-Cola bought it, ran it as far as that horse would go, and then they killed it. So there's my bunny trail down Odwalla, named for a fruit juice that inspired many and killed and poisoned other people.
Well,
there you
Dad
go.
mentioned that earlier when you guys were in your power outage. There was a drink that he had seen before.
Yep, Odwalla.
But the name from the drink came from Art Ensemble.
It did.
Odwalla.
They were inspired. Yeah, inspired by it.
See, that's why I love having you guys on the show, because I didn't even think about that. I was worried that Odwalla was something else. They were golden calf god that they were worshiping or something. I didn't want to go into it because I was scared, but you guys did. You dug into it, man.
Craziness.
Right?
You're on fire.
Something I didn't interrupt in the earlier slides about when the Art Ensemble of Chicago began. It actually started earlier than 1967, I think is what you quoted. It was considered the Roscoe Miller Art Ensemble. And for
Roscoe Mitchell. Yeah.
Roscoe Mitchell, I'm sorry.
Yep.
For several years before that, they were the Roscoe Mitchell Art Ensemble. And it was about spoken word. It was about the exhibit on stage, and it was about the music as well. And I got into that when I started tracking down Roscoe Mitchell and the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, the AACM. And when you realize that the art ensemble had been existing long before that, and how did they get the name? They went overseas to Europe to perform. And they were the art ensemble based out of Chicago. So announcers started to use the term the Art Ensemble of Chicago. And they brought back that label, Art Ensemble of Chicago. Roscoe and so many others, Lester Bowie, Malachi, started the AACM, the Association of Advancement of Creative Musicians. And basically it started as a way to promote this music and much more. Started then in 65 and continues, I think, today with Bag.
Very cool.
So a lot of rich, deep history going back to 65, 64 as well. And that all started with the mistake I made of not listening to more music from the art ensemble. 52 albums, come on. And how many other albums did Roscoe have? How many did Lester have? Don Moye on drums have? These guys were the best of the best of, some of them are the best. Some of them were the best of the best of the best.
Yep.
And I threw them out real quick because I just didn't understand the music.
Correct.
So, my bad.
So I was also reading about Roscoe Mitchell earlier today, and on his wiki page, for what it's worth,
right?
Okay, I'm proud to say that he joined the United States Army right out of high school, and he was stationed in Heidelberg, Germany. And he played in military parades with fellow saxophonist Albert Eiler. So it doesn't state that he was in the Army band, but it does state that he played in military parades. So I thought
I read something about the 11th Army Band.
Yeah.
Might come around.
But Roscoe, that means I have a 2 degrees. I have a 2 degree because he was in the military band. I was in the military.
There you go.
Band. So I'm 2 degrees from Art Ensemble of Chicago.
Okay. I'm kind of saying this now. If you can't realize that Matt and I may have made a mistake early by judging it by even the first album, and oops, I made a mistake. The reality is, as we come back full circle to wrap up the episode, is that the questions are and statements are, what we don't know, we don't know. And so when we go about listening to this, I want to ask the both of you, what would you have rated this album and you're listening to?
Yeah. Go ahead, Dad. Go ahead, Dad.
Personal preference.
When I first started listening to the album, I would not have rated it even beyond 2, because it just did not resonate. There was so, to me, such distortion that, and I was not familiar. I was not used to hearing 100 or more different instruments playing, seemed like all at the same time. And then you throw a gong in there and a guy wailing on a sax that you never expect the person to be able to do all that screechy stuff. I mean, screechy. It's like, whoa. And then it quiets down, and all of a sudden, boom, something explodes, almost like a tractor tire. It's like, whoa, what in the world? I would not have rated it very high at all. It was, I just wanted to plug my ears.
It's funny because those are some of the same comments that Drew and I made on a year ago when we talked about the album. I didn't want to put it back on. Yeah. I didn't like it.
And we said even at the end of last week's episode, boy, what are we going to have to do? We don't want to have to listen to it again. and yet I've listened to it twice this week.
Yeah, I've been through it, not from front, not from top to bottom, but I have been through at least twice.
Yep.
Bite-sized nuggets of that wasabi.
I would imagine if this was in your shuffle, you'd know who it is.
Yes.
I
will say that it is very, very recognizable.
Yeah.
Matt, would you fast forward or keep it on the song?
No, I'd keep it on the song.
Okay.
No, yeah, I keep it on.
I want to go back to Dad, though. After you said 2, but what would you rate it, even before our conversation, where would you have landed so that I can tag you with that?
Well, yeah, here's the other thing. When I look at it more comprehensively, with, like Phil said, the poetry, and it was poetry, the voice comes out. So it's artistic in terms of just using a voice. And it's not in a sing-song voice.
Yeah.
Not at all. And the artwork, that just in their faces, it doesn't really, it's not repulsive after you've seen and heard and processed like we've done tonight. It's not repulsive. I will say this: we live in a neighborhood that's multicultural, and so we have Burmese and folks from Thailand, and I see kids and mothers with their faces painted in all different forms, not just in our neighborhood, but in our community broadly. So, and if I think of it in terms of, okay, it's maybe African inspired, but then I hear, no, it's more globally inspired, which that makes a lot of sense to me. So I've got to, not have to, but I've grown to appreciate it a little bit more. Now, would I go back to the album over and over again? No, but
because you would score it at dare you?
What's that?
I said, dare you score it?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Tell us your score.
I would give it because I wouldn't go back to it. I wouldn't score it high. I would only score it maybe 4.5.
All right. Phil?
What about you?
Again, like you guys challenge me every week to go dig in, to go find out a little bit more until you get the art appreciation and the cultural desire, right? To express culture. I'm getting ready actually to go to Africa in September. My wife and I are going, getting down to teach class, and the class I'm teaching is culture. It's youth culture. And so how do you study a culture? You have to work to appreciate it. And so when you do what's called acculturation, it's the study of that culture, and you begin to appreciate a little bit more the culture.
So wait, are we doing a jazziation?
Jazziation?
Is that what we're doing?
A culture jazziation?
Acculturation, a jazziation?
Definitely. I like that.
Go ahead.
I like that. So for me, the appreciation, seriously, this album would still score up above the 5. I'm like at a 6. But like Dad said, I'm probably not going to flip this on because I'm like, yeah, I just need to listen to this Gregory Porter style, Coltrane style, whatever, right? I'm not going to it for that. But it actually was something I listened to and didn't think about it because my ADD allows me to do that kind of crap. And I'm just like, it's just music. It's just something going on in the background. So I wouldn't go to sleep to it. I wouldn't turn it on for a night when people are over. I probably won't go back and listen to it, anytime soon.
But if you heard it come on,
yes,
you'd probably at least you'd have some recognition of this might be Art Ensemble of Chicago. And if your guess was right, then see that's the big thing for me is my shuffle playlist. And if I can recognize it right off the bat, Gregory Porter came on during dinner at first 5 seconds of the song, and you're like, oh, I know that song.
Yeah. When it comes to the spectrum, you've got far one end or far the other. You got Art Ensemble and Gregory Porter. That means there's 1,000 other albums in between.
There you go.
But Art Ensemble came on as well, and within 5 seconds, because it was fresh in my mind, and because I had listened to it again this week.
Yeah,
I missed it. But what would you finalize your number at?
I said a 6. I still, because of the appreciation of the art.
Yep.
I would almost rate it higher if I could see it. I think it is something to be
That's what you
seen.
said. You would pay to see it.
Oh, I would. Yeah, I really would for the art side of it. Yeah.
Matt, we don't do this very often, but I want to ask you. Oh,
a question for you, Phil. Do you anticipate you could play some of that when you get to Kenya?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Just to talk about what you would appreciate and why you'd appreciate it. Yeah. And then as you dig into culture, you start to appreciate things. Oh, I could totally use this.
Good.
In Europe, when they first landed, they were doing a concert. 500 unique instruments on stage with them. So can I do it? I got to mute. You can play the straw like nobody I've ever met.
You know what my favorite one is? Is the little plastic whistle.
Yeah.
I can pick it out in the song, and I'm like, I had one of those when I was a kid. I drove my dad nuts.
Oh man, I wish I'd have thought of that, because that is so cool.
You could have had one.
We could have done our own little ensemble here.
The Art Ensemble of Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
So wait, I've got one more piece. All right, you ready for this last nugget? I got to share this because
it's going to be long like the last one.
Watch this. The seeing of it. I found this back in 1991. The Art Ensemble came to LA for one of the big theater dance musical festivals we had back then. Impresio Peter Sellis curated this one. So my friends and I got tickets to see them at the Waldworth Theater in Westwood. And our seats were not great at first. But by the second tune of the Art Ensemble, all were leaving in droves. So we knew this was going to be special. And so he said, we hopped all the way down to some empty seats in the very front row. The theater emptied out. And to this day, probably the most mind-blowing jazz I've ever not heard, seen. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Yep. Appreciation.
So I'm going to go ahead. We've already talked about our score a little bit. 4.5 was my score. And again, because it was 30 weeks into the journey and you're feeding wasabi to a 6-month-old, now I've grown up a little bit.
Drinking Adwala.
I've grown up a little bit. I wouldn't change my score necessarily. I'm going to leave it right at 4.5. We don't do that anyways. We don't change our score. But I do appreciate it more this week than I did a year ago.
I would say the same thing. What shook me was digging into who they are, what they were doing, and it didn't hurt to see a bunch of the artists recorded on ECM, who I have mad props for to begin with. If Manfred Eicher is recording them at ECM, then I should have been paying attention a long time ago. And I didn't, because I did not care for the free jazz style at the time. It's still not number one on my rating. If you say I've got this or free jazz, I'm going to go with that. Do you want to listen to A or B? A being free jazz. B. I don't care what B is. Just let me listen to B.
B.
So you've seen that before. A or I'm going to go to B. You want to know what B is? No, I don't care.
I don't care.
But I've grown to appreciate it over this, especially this last week, as I've dug into Roscoe and Lester and Richard Abrams, Don Moye. Just such a huge appreciation. I wouldn't change my score for the album. But wow, what did I not know? Well,
I will tell you this. 1999, they were 81 on the list. In 2006, they were actually number 56 on the list with a different album called A Jackson in Your House. Okay. I did not listen to that one, but I may put it in my ear this week. Did you?
I did.
Okay.
Wow.
So they were number 56 in 2006, and of course they're number 70 in 2022. So definitely an integral part of the jazz community, the jazz scene. But again, for a toddler, the wasabi was just a little too much for me with Fanfare.
Can I say, for me, when what you and I were talking, Matt, earlier, and my description be more like vegetable soup. Just vegetable soup. Yeah, succotash vegetable soup. Because you got all that stuff mixed together. But depending on who the cook is, I'm sure, Matt, you make just radical, great tasting vegetable soup. Your mama does too. And so just taste that. Just taste that vegetable soup. And
I think, Drew, back to what you said about our history, we're going to have to throw some tater tots on top of that casserole.
That's true. With some meat.
To appreciate a tater tot casserole with vegetable soup.
Yes.
I thought you were going to lima beans. That's why I was like,
no.
No.
Oh, that's good.
All right. Any final thoughts on Art Ensemble?
Man, I seriously appreciate these guys and everything that they've done for not only what I can't even fathom how many things that they've done, but the history that they've pushed for, how they brought AACO, right? To create their own album, their label, like, wow, so much appreciation for the art, for everything that's there. So,
Dad, you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very similar to Phil and his remarks because, again, all the different, like you say, 500 different instruments, and they can somehow bring it together. Whether it's a great sounding kind of thing, but yet all of this stuff comes together to make not just noise, but something that a lot of people can appreciate. A lot of people can say, "Hey, this is really, really cool. I'm into this." So,
cool. And I would say that there's a video in the description below for the 1974 Montreux Jazz Fest. Phil, take a look at this. It's in the description below. But when you think about art on stage, that's what this description what the link will be for. Killer.
Love it.
And that would be my final thoughts. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yep.
Take a listen to the album. Like it, don't like it, but don't just assume that that's the end of the story. As I have learned from many of the other albums, go check out Lester Brown's Brass Fantasy.
Yeah.
Check out the big brass band, which I'm a fan of. Big band, brass, but it's got tubas instead of bass guitars. Just remember, first and foremost, they're musical artists. So that would be my closing thought on any of that. Matt, what about you?
I'm not going to talk too much about Art Ensemble, but I will say this. Closing thought. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you live with us on the channel. You got thrown into some of the hardest weeks that we've had to do, and you've come through dropping nuggets every week. I hope you continue with us on our journey, following us at least as much as you can in Romania. Thank you so much for being part of this. The stuff that you brought to each and every week just blew me away. So I'm glad you were here. I'm glad you got to do this with us, and thank you for being here. Yeah, it means a lot that you're even interested in it. And then to get thrown into a week,
Lindo Jazz Suite,
the Joe Harris Vocal Quintet, Comedic Quintet, Tong Funeral. Of course, Woody Herman was a good week, anyways. But then, Art Ensemble. Those were some tough nuggets to process. And man, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. You guys are an inspiration. I've loved hanging out, if for anything, just with my brothers. It's been really cool, especially to bring Dad into it as well. The memories that we've made, the connections we've made. I don't know what happens to YouTube. I don't know what happens to these videos, but into the future, I think this will be cool for our families to be able to look back. You think of the family history, what you could appreciate about them. We're goofy, we're crazy, we're talking about jazz, and who knows where it goes from here. So yeah, as I head back to Romania in a couple of weeks, I'll go back with a little bit more appreciation for it and keep watching you guys. Keep doing it.
Yeah. I would hope that we can record early next week so that he can actually listen to jazz music as we think of it. But if not, you'll be joining us through YouTube, and I'm sure you'll continue to use emails and let us know about your thoughts on the albums coming up.
Definitely.
And Dad, you too. You're along for the ride, and being a messenger like you are, I'm proud. I'm proud that you're doing that for us. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you continue to feel included, and if you want to talk, for sure.
I don't know how many more episodes you have, but I'm going to Romania with this thing.
Oh yeah, Dad, you're not invited back for a while. I got to get a couple of those cups of tea.
I'm sure I've had at least 7 or 8 episodes.
Well, just like all the bricks that he put down in the backyard, I'm sure he's done 120 of them.
Yes.
Matt, that reminds me, this week or next, I'll send you a couple of Yetis to get engraved. That way Dad's got his. He can feel legitimate.
Yeah, right.
Nice.
I was thinking about burnt orange for Hook 'em Horns.
Ooh,
Yeah. That'll work.
Anyways.
Get a little burnt orange going. Inspiration.
Inspiration.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much.
Orange for Liberty Center Tigers.
That's right.
There you go.
All right, let me introduce next week's album. So next week is number 69 in the top 100 countdown of the jazz albums that shook the world. The album is Art Tatum and Ben Webster, Art Tatum and Ben Webster Quartet. It was released on the Verve label on LP and CD, and Art Tatum plays the piano, Ben Webster plays the tenor sax, Red Callender plays the bass, and Bill Douglas plays the drums. It was recorded in 1956, and it is. I'll just tell you this: it's amazing. You're gonna love it.
Cool.
Art Tatum and Ben Webster. Now, Art, I won't give too much away, but Art was born in Toledo, Ohio.
No way.
Hey, wait a minute! I said this a couple of months ago. Isn't that where Radar's from?
Yes, Radar is from Toledo.
Right around the corner from Archibald, where our family landed and settled and had farms and everything.
You guys are goobers.
Go to our roots. That's awesome.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us this week. It's been a great discussion of Art Ensemble of Chicago, and make sure to put Art Tatum and Ben Webster in your ear this week so you can follow along with our discussion.
Yes.
Vă mulțumim foarte mult pentru tot ați fost aici și continuă cu noi în România. Ok, la revedere.
La revedere.
Yes.
A lot of spaghetti.